Welcome to Capes, Cowls and Masks, where we uncover the world of Supes and science fiction. My name is Jake Hart. I'm a sound designer and Foley artist, and I'm also joined by David Osger, who is a writer and journalist. Two things David and I have in common is we're both podcast hosts and love the world of superheroes. So we decided to join forces to give you guys a fortnightly show to drop on a Wednesday to tie nicely into New Comic Book Day. We'll be discussing all the latest and greatest from the world of superheroes, sci-fi, and fantasy, whether it be film, TV, comics, or video games. We keep it raw, real, and R-rated, so this show is not for the faint of heart. On our very first episode, we introduce ourselves, we talk about all the stuff we watched this past week, and all other cool shit we love that got us into this wonderful nerd culture. And to top off the show, we give our top 3 comic book movies of all time. That's all this week on Capes, Cowls and Masks. So David, we are finally here.
Yes.
After weeks, months of preparing and talking about this, we finally got a podcast going talking about science fiction, superheroes, and all the other cool shit we like.
Yeah, the day has come. The first issue, you could say.
The first issue, episode 1.
Yes. So is that the origin story of how we got our powers and how we met our arch villain?
Basically, it's trying not to go the X-Men Origins Wolverine right now.
No.
Maybe more X-Men First Class style.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
We'll go for that one.
We'll just avoid the Cold War kind of
vibe.
vibe.
Let's not... And Kevin Bacon as well.
Yes. I might, to be fair, start multiplying a bit and getting a bit...
And absorbing all that energy.
Yeah, if I get very in my head about how much I love a certain film, but... we'll see.
Yeah, well, that's exactly why we're here today, and we'll be here every other week. Fortnightly, this show is going to be for you lovely listeners, where we're just going to be talking about cool shit. It's like going around to your friend's house and talking nerd stuff all night long. We've been talking about this for a while. I featured on your podcast 2-3 times now.
Yes,
and all been comic book related.
Yes.
We did...
the Joker was...
Joker was first episode.
Yeah.
When the Joaquin Phoenix movie was coming out.
Yes, yeah. And then we had DC, just looking at DC as a whole before Birds of Prey.
Yeah, the DCEU. And then recently we did the X-Men.
Yes, yeah, which was very fun and a good chance to
That
change
was
to
good.
Marvel.
I like that one. We delved quite into deep themes on that one as well.
Yeah, exactly. And it's always the fun observations you have about films from the 2000s and that kind of era. Yeah. There's another project I've been working on which made me think of that more. I think you said it, wasn't it? It's like it started the team film mentality.
Absolutely.
But then it was interesting because I was looking at another superhero film and I was like, even though, Blade and X-Men started those trends, started off the trend and, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man.
I felt the Spider-Man was a very different breed of, because obviously when I looked at it, I was like, well, is it there? Is it that big a jump in the finances of it? And it was like X-Men's box office was like 150 million and Spider-Man's was like 700. And I was like, yeah.
Fucking huge.
Yeah.
Spider-Man was massive.
Yeah.
And despite, all the, rightfully so negative stuff about Spider-Man 3, that movie nearly made $1 billion in a time where that was not really, you didn't hear about that.
I think it was like the opening weekend was a big deal at that point as well, wasn't it? Because that was at the time when opening weekends became a big thing then because of that film, because it was, and I remember being young and it was all like, ooh, changing the thing to 12A and all that
it was huge. I remember lining up to see that film, my friends so excited, and we got what we got.
Yeah.
Peter Parker being a bit of an emo.
Yeah.
But hey.
Well, yeah, number 3, but but I was thinking back to number 1 when it was that whole debate as to whether that was when they changed from PG and then they had 12 and they introduced 12A because of the first Spider-Man.
It's a bit more hardcore, but not quite for adults.
Exactly, yeah. So because they were like, oh, it's too too violent, but we still want children to see it. How do we get around this?
Well, the thing is, it is like there's certain scenes in those early Spider-Man films and the X-Men films that are quite violent.
Yeah.
Like you see blood,
Yeah.
which you don't get in any Marvel movie.
No,
like
exactly.
to this day, I don't think like if you see blood in a Marvel film, you don't see it like being splattered. It's sort of like they've already got a cut.
Yeah.
And you're like, where did they get that cut? You don't see that happen. They just have the cut.
Would you see a villain kind of impaled with blood in their mouth and like collapse like like you do in the first Spider-Man?
Exactly.
I can't imagine that happening.
No, I don't see Marvel going that right.
Or Disney, more specifically, probably.
Exactly, man. Which it's I don't know, man. It worries me. It worries me slightly because I think you should, have room for more mature stuff, and that there's plenty of Marvel characters that do lend themselves to that. And Blade's a perfect example.
Yeah.
Like they announced they're remaking Blade. Cool. Mahershala Ali as the character. Brilliant.
Perfect. Yeah.
Fucking amazing. Whoever cast that.
Yeah.
Like
and they got the whole Deadpool situation as well. It's like
it's a different machine as well.
Yeah.
But with Blade, I feel as if like I don't know. Like Kevin Feige has gone on record saying it's going to be PG-13, and he was like, "And you're going to like it."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Am I though?" Like, it just lends itself to more darker themes. I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, yeah. That's the good thing about doing this podcast. Like I said, we get to deep dive into stuff, get into the more nerdy stuff. I think, like in the past, sometimes you can get like waylaid by facts and figures. So that's why I'm happy to do this. It's just that we can talk big theories and
just talk,
nerd it up.
Yeah, exactly. But I have to say, we will bring up theories and we'll probably talk about rumors.
Yeah.
But I have to say,
well, I heard a rumor.
Yeah. There we go. Umbrella Academy.
Yeah.
You've been watching that, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
Fucking amazing, man. Season 2, just like I like season 1. It's a bit of a slow burner though at times. Wasn't quite on board with all the characters.
Yeah.
But this season, loved every character. So coherent. Klaus is my spirit animal. Like he just
the two hands.
Yeah, like he's one of those. Like I've read some of Umbrella Academy. I've read like the first 3 volumes.
Yeah.
So I'm familiar with what they were adapting in season 1 and 2. But he's one of those actors that you go, man, he is that character, and he needs to, like, that is him, you know, sort of thing. Like, like Heath Ledger and the Joker and other characters you associate with certain actors.
Yeah.
It's him, man, and he's just amazing in every way. Like,
I like how that you can tell as well when people take it seriously, or that, I'm not saying that he's method or anything like that, but I think I saw an interview with him where he was saying about, I didn't feel that I had matured or changed the character enough since season 1. I was worried about that after we filmed. And then when he did ADR for the second season, he was watching his stuff back and was like, I was too harsh on myself. And so you can tell how good an actor he is already, that he's taking that character so seriously and that he's thinking about that kind of stuff, whereas some people might be like, it's just a comic book sort of thing, I'll just paycheck gig kind of stuff, whereas I think all of them as well do really care about the characters, which is good.
I was about to say, I feel as if after season 1 all of them sort of got really attached to their character. I was like, right, what can I do next? Like, how can I expand this character into something amazing? And 5 was one of the standouts for me. I mean, I don't know how old that kid is, but kid's got a bright future ahead.
Yeah, I was surprised. I thought it was a case of 20, Tom Holland kind of thing, like a 23-year-old playing a 50, but he is like 16. And I was like,
he's a young kid.
Yeah. So I was like, touche, because actually, usually it's the older teenager playing a younger, but it's almost as if, because obviously he is playing an old man in a way. That
53,
yeah,
but in like any 14-year-old body.
Exactly. Like. So he's playing that really well, and that's what I'm most impressed with about him, is that he's able to act like a 23-year-old playing a 15-year-old, if you know what I mean. He's got like age and wisdom behind him somehow. I saw some people trashing him the other day on Twitter or something, saying, he thinks this and he has opinions about this, and he was saying that these kind of people, and I was like, he's 15, come on, you can't compare him to somebody like Chris Evans, who's got years of experience, and if he says something about politically or whatever, he should be old enough not to say that. Whereas this kid, he'll learn the industry. He's own,
I don't know of any other of his work. I believe this is probably his first big project, so
Well, even if it's not the industry, I think he was just talking about like life sort of lessons and stuff. But it's like, again, he's 15. He needs to live to really, you know, have an opinion on these things. But I'm not going to judge him unless he says something really offensive, of course. But I don't think it was.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah, I hope we're definitely going to get a season 3, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't leave it. No spoilers here, but you can't leave it on that cliffhanger.
No.
And not give us a season 3.
And it's Netflix, so everyone knows there's going to be a big cliffhanger.
The only problem I have is that the Netflix model for most shows, maybe apart from like 2 or 3, seems to be 3 and done.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I kind of hope we don't get that for the Umbrella Academy, because I feel as if they said like the next season was the last, I'd be kind of disappointed, because I feel as if we haven't nowhere near, we've almost just barely scratched the surface of these characters.
Yeah.
And the fact, like you brought up, where each season you can do it in a different era.
Yeah, exactly.
Very much like they do in the books. Is great, man. You could just play around, you have so much freedom to do this as well.
Yeah.
To like, to go back to the future or the past and just play around with different stuff. Like,
if it was a 3rd season, like I've had plenty of shows which I'm like, yeah, those seasons, keep them as they are, perfect. So I think I could have my piece if they did want to go down that route. But like you, I'd also be surprised, because Netflix seems very hungry to have, a Mandalorian, a franchise that they can keep going, because they need that big hit, that big show, another Stranger Things. So I would be shocked if they wanted to do away with it after 3 seasons, because it seems like they kind of need the win.
Yeah, definitely. Because Stranger Things is ending soon.
Yeah, so
especially since now, obviously Marvel got all the stuff back.
Yeah,
to play with. They don't have that to play with, so they've lost all the Marvel Netflix stuff. They need something.
Yeah,
they need something, because you got Disney Plus coming out with a bang.
Yeah,
HBO Max, big question mark over HBO Max at the minute.
Yeah.
But Doom Patrol, man, that's the one thing that HBO Max has got going for it. But like I said, it's really DC Universe. I'm gutted, actually, that you watched the show?
I haven't yet, no. I keep going to look at like how to watch it, but it's like, it says like you need a Stars Play subscription, is it, on Amazon? And I'm like,
yeah, or you can get it on the Apple TV or something like that.
Okay.
But I found other ways to watch it. I just needed to watch this show because everyone was talking about it. I was like, I need to watch this show.
Yeah.
And I really liked the appearance in Titans. Titans is whatever.
Oh, the actual Doom Patrol has a cameo, sort of.
Yeah, so like in the first season, one of the episodes was all about the Titans visit Doom Patrol.
Oh, right.
And this was like the introduction to the Doom Patrol, and that episode was so well received. They were like, yeah, make a series of these guys.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yeah. So they made the series. Season 1 is, honestly, it's some of the best comic book superhero TV I've ever seen. It's just, at the beginning, I was like, I don't know about this. At the beginning, I thought it was vulgar for the sake of being vulgar. It's very raunchy and a lot of cussing and crazy violence. And then it is really weird. It's a weird show. It's weird, man. Like there's a living street, transgender street, like a road.
Right, okay.
That teleports around the world.
Right.
And then they're all there, and at some point this guy, Flex Mentallo, right, he's got powers where he flexes his muscles, right? And then everyone, including this living street in the street, started orgasming. Yeah, that's just...
And there's like 16 episodes or something, isn't it?
Season 1's got 15.
Yeah.
And then season 2, it's only got 9. It was meant to have 10, but because of COVID, they didn't get to finish shooting the last episode.
Oh.
And it left on a huge cliffhanger, which I was like, because they couldn't finish it. But it's some of the best. Once you get past the first few episodes, once you get over how weird it is, and then if you buy into the craziness that is Doom Patrol, it's so good.
Yeah.
Diana Guerrero, who plays Crazy Jane,
right?
Who it's sort of like a split thing where she's got 64 different personalities.
Okay.
And she mainly focuses on up to 10 really, but the odd ones do pop out now and then. She deserves an Emmy. If they gave Oscars for TV, she'd give the fucking Oscar.
They almost do sometimes, but
it's honestly one of the best performances I've ever seen. She is incredible, man. And another thing I got to tell you to watch Doom Patrol: Sex Ghosts.
Right.
sex ghost. Okay. So
context.
no context. No. Watch the show. Everyone watch it, like, because it's arguably one of my favorites comic book series.
I've heard more and more good things, and I am continuously like, I need to watch it because, yeah, weird comic book stuff usually is sort of more where I like it if it does go a bit different to the norm.
Mm-hmm. Same here,
and
man.
I think I had a similar experience talking to my friend about Umbrella Academy. He was saying, "Oh, I'm watching the first season now because I know season 2 has come out. I'm not sure yet." And I'm like, "Which episode you at?" I think 4 or 5. I was like, "Yep, you start wait, yeah, 6 or 7. It'll start getting into it."
Up, yeah.
So, and yeah, it sounds like it's the same case with Doom Patrol. But I had the same experience with not so much actually the episodes, but The Boys. When I saw the trailer for that before it came out, I didn't actually like it at all. I was just like, and like you said, I thought it was a bit too, I was like, this is trying too much. They're trying, because the trailer was so much like, look, blood, and look, alternate superheroes wearing sort of generic costumes. Look, we're making fun of, superheroes and that kind of stuff. And I was like, I don't like this. This seems like Amazon trying too much. And then I hear good things. And then literally I was invested in the first episode. So
good,
yeah.
The Boys, man. Yeah, I was
and that's coming up as well. So
yeah, I can't wait for that. I was invested way before. I love the comics. I already knew The Boys from Dynamite Comics. Garth Ennis, the writer who wrote Preacher, which is also one of my favorite comic book series.
And on Amazon as well.
And on Amazon as well. But the reason why is because I love Preacher. And then they made the series. I thought, how are they going to make this series? Because it's so dark. It's so out there. And I thought, how are they going to make this into a TV show? Obviously, you have Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg doing it. They killed it with that. And then the same creative duo said, we're going to do The Boys. Adapting more Garth Ennis work. I was like, cool, you got me on board. And it did something which, the comic is great. It's so good. And it's exactly sort of like the show. Lots of blood, a play on what the superhero stereotype is and, all this other crazy stuff. But what the show did, which much better than the comics, is that it gave all the characters, made them a lot more human, made them a lot more relatable. It just gave the whole series or franchise a lot more heart. Billy Butcher, for example, like in the comics, I mean, in the TV show, he's not a nice guy. Like he does some bad shit. But he's got, Carl Urban is so good. He's got so much charisma that you're like, yeah, I like this guy. And I believe why he's doing what he's doing. But in the comics, he's just a straight up thug, butcher type of guy that you kind of like, I hate all these guys. But that's sort of the point. You kind of hate all of them because they're all assholes.
Yeah, exactly,
sort of what the Suicide Squad was sort of meant to be like. But this is so good. Yeah. So good. And I can't wait for season 2.
And what I like, they kind of do it with The Boys as well. And why I like opposed then to when you do get your more typical superhero stuff, and it circles back to the Umbrella Academy, is I like it when they do stuff with like alternate powers, and it's not just, oh look, this person, say like Deadpool for example, they used it as a joke, but there's that guy who like pukes toxic vomit or whatever, and that's clearly meant to be there for like a joke. But when the Umbrella Academy and The Boys have these powers, like, she can like, shine and bring out rays of light, you're like, oh, I've never seen that before. So with the rumor thing, it's cool how you get to see these different scenarios in which you're like, oh, how would that work there? And how would, and the fact that she's abused her power and, people don't trust her and she's used it on a child. And then in season 2, it creates a whole different sort of like dilemma she has to go through as well there. So I like those shows, and it sounds like Doom Patrol has it as well, if she has the split personality, which have those alternate powers. And again, like Ben, Klaus, all of them, they all have really different kind of powers and traits. And The Boys has like half of it kind of does the kind of, the speed thing is more just Flash.
It does the more traditional sort of heroes, but that's intentional.
Yeah.
It's done as a satire sort of thing.
Like what would Superman be like if his laser vision
what
did
are they,
literally...
The 7 are basically the Justice League.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I mean? So
and that's why I'm excited with season 2, is if they do it looks like they might have a few more conventional sort of powers where they got like the super terrorists and stuff.
Yeah, well, we got Stormfront, the new, which is interesting because they've gender swapped that character to a female. Is she
actually like weather, or is it just lightning?
I think it's just lightning, if I'm not mistaken.
The trailer, that's all I've seen. Yeah, because originally when I heard Stormfront, I thought, oh, it's like Storm.
I don't think it's quite Storm like that controls. I think it is just like electricity.
Too big a budget.
I could be wrong. They could change
TV.
it for the series. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, here we are after a very long intro on Capes, Cowls and Masks, where we talk about superheroes, sci-fi, all that good shit. Because it's our first episode, we're just having a general chit-chat, telling people who we are, what we like. But as from the next episode, we got our big DC fandom episode coming up.
That's going to be exciting.
Which we're going to talk about everything that drops there.
And the amount of guests that have been announced for that recently, it's like 300 sort of guests.
There's a lot of guests there.
Wow.
I want to ask you a question. What was the first thing? What got you into nerd culture? What was like the first sort of beginnings of you? Was it books? Was it TV, films? What was your first thing that was like, yo, this is cool?
Yeah.
And then you launched into being a geek.
Yeah. I'd say, it's always going to be like a visual thing for me because I am a very visual person, like having studied film and all that kind of stuff. So for me, like one of my earliest memories is, and maybe of just any film, is Darth Vader in the TIE Fighter in the trench run. I remember as a child, I could still remember as one of my earliest memories being like, oh, who's that? My dad being like, that's Darth Vader. And, was amazed. And I was like, this is insane. So that was always the moment in which, I think I was taken aback by something that was like, space and, and I always had something about like, so say like, I think, do you remember the days of Fox Kids and,
Absolutely.
So when they originally started advertising Fox Kids before the channel, so I think my parents like maybe took out Sky, like in the early days of Sky before all the channels had come out. So they were like, you have these channels, but these channels are coming up in the next year or something. And they had an advert for Fox Kids. And one of the preview little things that they showed in it was Power Rangers. And I remember seeing that and be like, oh my God, that looks amazing, because they're in helmets and they all have their own colors and stuff. So it's always been something about like the superhero costumes and like the idea of having helmets, and it just changes your entire outlook of somebody. So I think for me, whereas like Superman is great, I was never drawn to that character because I always like the idea of like the mask and who's behind the mask and all that kind of stuff. And it was the same for Spider-Man. One of my favorite cartoons growing up was Spider-Man the Animated Series, and that's been great revisiting that on Disney Plus. That theme song was always embedded in my memory kind of thing. So yeah, I think those were Star Wars, Spider-Man. They're like my bread and butter of like nerd geek sort of stuff, and like I said, it's just been ongoing since then. Loads of different programs, the X-Men 90s cartoon, the Batman the Animated Series. We grew up at that time in which it was like all these animated programs with different comic book properties, and they were coming from people who really loved them and really sort of were affectionate to them. And it was also that you watching each one, again, I'm just being grumpy now, but it does feel like if you're a kid now, you'd kind of flip between the different cartoons and they all have the same vibe.
It's all shit.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry, but a few years ago, like my brother's a bit older now, but I got a younger brother. And when he was a bit younger, he was watching whatever cartoons.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, is this the stuff they're showing to kids now?
Yeah.
Where's Batman?
Yeah.
Where's X-Men, Spider-Man? All these,
they all have their
shows.
own flavor. That was what was so good about them, is the fact that it was like Batman is a noir crime thriller. The X-Men is this massive 90s power, superhero show. Spider-Man was this adventure neighborhood
Quippy
Spider-Man,
kid,
So yeah, they all had their own flavor, and they all were very distinctly. Even as a kid, you're watching the Batman opening, like, what is this? Because it's so dark and sinister.
That's where I sort of came into it. Was but prior to the animated series, I think my earliest memory was is Bat Nipples, and it's Batman Forever. So it's the Val Kilmer one,
right? Okay.
And to this day, I still have a really soft spot in my heart for that movie, because to my memory, that's the earliest thing I remember of geeky pop culture stuff.
Yeah.
Where my uncle had it on VHS, and I remember seeing this and being like, wow, Batman, what's this sort of thing? Like, and he'd be like, oh, you can borrow it, watch it. And I'm like, okay, yeah. And then watching that and seeing, you know, as a kid, the bright colors of that film.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
the Batmobile is awesome. Like,
Yeah.
you know, Val Kilmer's in the suit, he's muscular, he's taking out all these bad guys. Jim Carrey's crazy as a Riddler. Me just being, and it wasn't quite. It was camp, but it wasn't quite on Batman and Robin yet.
It wasn't.
Still had this dark thing about it and the gothic landscape that I was like, this is cool. Then I found out Batman the Animated Series, which to this day I still think is the best adaptation of Batman. I think.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't quite think any of the movies or any future TV shows have quite got it right.
No.
They've got some other stuff really right, but as the whole picture, it's not quite there. Not as these guys did it. And then, like you said, the X-Men, Spider-Man. A few years later was the Superman animated series, which tied into the Batman animated series.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like that was for me with my superhero stuff. And then, but what actually sort of when it clicked for me that I really love this stuff, full on geek culture, and I want to be invested in this stuff to another level, and also somehow do this for the rest of my life. Like, was Lord of the Rings. Seeing that for the first time, being completely transported to Middle Earth.
Yeah.
You know, to being just so, you know, infatuated with everything that was going on in screen around me. You know, the whole world building and all these characters and, you know, all the weapons and everything. I thought it was, to me, 9, 10, I was going, this is insane. I love this so much. To that, after seeing the first movie, to my dad saying, oh, there's books of these. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Let me read what happens next.
Yeah,
like,
exactly,
sort of thing. And I didn't know what I was reading at the time. That book is so dense. So at that age, I'm like, wow, this is a heavy book to read. So I tried, but failed miserably. As the years went on, revisited it, and now I can, you know, be like, wow.
Now you can speak Elvish.
Yeah, what an amazing piece of fiction this is. But the films, like, it was actually, I was really sad when, in the first film, when we think Gandalf has died.
Yeah.
After he fights the Balrog.
Yeah.
You know? And me being incredibly sad and being like, oh my God. And my dad sort of telling me, oh, don't worry, they don't let the good guys die.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and it clicked for me, and I was like, wait, who's they? And then it didn't quite sink in yet, and I was like, wait, do people make these? Like, do people write these?
Yeah.
Like, what? And then it was only until I got the extended editions on DVD that came with the behind the scenes, all the appendices, which are as long, if not longer, than the films. And just to this day, I think those are the best behind the scenes of any film that anyone has ever done. There's just so much content.
Yeah.
And I tell people, like, don't go to film school. Just watch all these.
Yeah.
Because it will literally guide you through the whole process of how it is to make a big budget film. This was the time where you had people like Peter Jackson and all his team who loved the stuff. And, you know, the creators of Batman and the animated series, they loved the stuff.
Yeah.
We're at an age now where I think all the sort of people growing up with these original comic books, we're now sort of are either adults and making the stuff, or, you know, you and me were on the... I don't really consider myself an adult yet, but I'm on the verge of being like a man, you know, becoming an adult and making content of my own. And that's why I think we've reached a new stage now where the majority of stuff, I'd say, is quite good now. Yeah. You know, I'd say maybe 75, 80% of all the comic book movies now, I'd be like, yeah, that's enjoyable on some level. Yeah. Do you think it's because the people that are growing up with the original comic books are now making the stuff?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that they're being bolder about their decisions, and they're putting more power into the creative people who do it. And I think the DC Marvel thing is, you know, as much as we talk about it, you know, you have to always reference Marvel because they are doing such a good job. But it's Kevin Feige, you know, he cares about this
standard of Hollywood right now.
He makes the stuff. Again, it's not just so, well, there's an element of, you know, I want to make Doctor Strange because I like Doctor Strange, but that's fine when you are a fan of it, kind of stuff. It's not that, oh, I want to make this really random comic from the 60s that nobody knows about. You know, he is a fan of the content himself. He knows how to do it. And I think the biggest example for me is something like Civil War, which is like completely different to the original comic book. But they do enough of the core ideas of the characters and what the story is about to make people still love it. So nobody's there going, well, that didn't happen in the comic book, because they make it work in the confines of the universe and the story. And yeah, I don't think that every franchise needs to have this cinematic approach and go through all the details. But as a nerd and, somebody, a lot of people who follow these details, it is important when you do get
time. That's the thing.
So if you see something which then you go, that wouldn't have happened because that character wasn't alive then, or that and that can go for anything, sci-fi, fantasy, comic books. So
anything that has a history, really. Yeah,
exactly. And that's what, I think Star Wars is such a massive reflection of all of that, because it's so generational. You were talking about the behind the scenes with Lord of the Rings. I had the same thing. I've still got it. It's like a gold VHS box set of the original trilogy.
Yeah.
And
same.
because it was the special editions, they started it off with like, how did we change this?
Yeah, I had the special editions too on VHS. Do you have, it was like the Darth Vader gold.
Yeah, and it slips
and
away.
Slipped out. That's the one, yeah.
So it's weird how those films would start with George Lucas like, oh, hey, this is how we changed it. And as a kid, you're like, why am I watching this? I don't know what you're talking about. But like because I watched those films so much, it gradually went more and more into my mind. So I think that's where I was like, oh, that's how that's made. Oh, that's how you do that. And so I think I took a bit more from that and got interested in like the behind the scenes of it. But again, you can also see how they really love the content they're talking about, because they're like, oh, we changed this alien and we did this, and, because we know this character and how they look and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I think it's that level of attention and care. And you said James Gunn earlier, and then being brought together with people who have been inspired by this stuff and not just making a carbon copy. They're like, well, this is what I like, and this is, Ragnarok again is a great example of being like, and this bring out the what's the artist's name, where they wanted to have the sort of bubble effect of the guy who drew
Jack Kirby.
Yeah, so
Kirby, I mean that is a Kirby film.
Yeah,
like, if he was alive today, he'd be like, "Yep, that's what I imagined."
So it's that kind of stuff, which is like the nice little details that you get.
Why do you love superheroes? Why do you love sci-fi? Why do you think people love it? Why are we doing this podcast?
I think I'm not sure exactly who said it, but the sort of comparison I like is that people say about. I think Stephen Fry talks a bit about it, how people have always tied themselves to stories. So he talks about when he does that tour and that book he did about Greek gods and myths. And I think somebody before said that, superheroes are like our modern myths and stories, is that, instead of talking about Hercules, or even though he is a comic book character, we're talking about Spider-Man and Batman. And it's that idea of taking real world concepts but putting them through the filter of an imaginary story. So I like that idea of Spider-Man has real world problems, so even though you could be there stressed out about your job or your relationship, etc., and you might not be stressed out about going to fight crime, you could still use that as a escapism to what you are feeling if you are stressed out by being in a car accident or something. It's that idea that they take real world concepts and then apply it to like a, fantasy scenario. And I think with Lord of the Rings and Star Wars, maybe slightly Harry Potter and stuff, there's a bit more of the whole escapism aspect. So whereas they don't
in like a pocket universe sort of thing. Yeah,
they don't so much. I don't watch Star Wars and go, oh yeah, that's like real life, etc. They do have it at the say the father and son relationship with Luke and Vader,
themes, essential themes.
Yeah. But I think it's also just the dramatics of all of it. It's it's when you get a great film that's able to be dramatic and big and somewhat goofy maybe sometimes, but pull it off because they've got really good dialogue, they got good performances, everyone's invested in it. And with Star Wars, a lot of it is, John Williams is like a massive boost to that. The visuals are a massive boost, the costumes. So again, I think that, I love it all because it's just that great collaboration. And, that's why I like doing stuff like this is, collaborating with people and talking to people. So it is great that you get this opportunity for people to be like, I've made this Darth Vader costume. I've, so Star Wars, for example, you can have a convention which a bunch of people turn up in the 501st, like that's great, and you've got like Mandalorians, people having their own Mandalorian armor.
Sorts of cosplay,
yeah. So it's also that element of it, which is really fun. And it's the adaptability of it then as well, isn't it? Somebody can turn up as, the one that popped to mind immediately was like, say somebody can cosplay as like a dark Ahsoka or something, but that kind of is based on what's happened. But you can have characters which are
fun
and don't have a history of being a dark version, but somebody can cosplay as the dark version. Like, ooh, that would be cool if you saw that in a comic. And then they do. That's what I love about George Lucas, is that when you watch the behind the scenes of the prequels, he's just going through like a board of sketches and drawings, being like, this one, I like this one, I like this one. That doesn't fit with the universe. That does fit with the universe. And
he would always say, that looks great, but not for my film.
Yeah. And I think is a Ayla Secura, like the Twi'lek Jedi.
The blue Twi'lek.
Yeah. So that came from like expanded universe stuff. He was like, oh, I like the idea of that being a Jedi, and just put it in the films. So I think that idea as well of like, and having that world building, it's kind of what I've missed with the newer films, but that's a completely different subject.
A whole nother can of worms. We'll open that one day.
Yes, yeah.
The prequels versus the sequels.
Yes. That was the moment I, awoke as a nerd, was watching The Phantom Menace, Jar Jar,
Oh dear.
Numbing his tongue in the pod race. I was like, yep, this is for me.
Yeah, I have vivid memories of especially Revenge of the Sith. I remember seeing that in the cinema and being sort of blown away at the time, but also kind of disappointed. But we'll get into that.
Get there.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of similar to you. I think what makes superheroes so relatable these days is because of all the central themes and how, in a way, even DC, which DC I've always considered a bit more godlike, a bit more mythic.
Yeah, that's
because you have, if you look at like the lineup of the Justice League compared to like the Avengers, you have Superman, you have Wonder Woman, and who are gods essentially. These beings that we can't comprehend as humans. Batman, he's a human, but there's times where he is also portrayed as a godlike figure.
But also a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. Something we can't sort of relate to. But then you go to Marvel and you have Peter Parker, which is incredibly relatable, and the X-Men, which that's the reason I was so drawn to the X-Men as a kid, mainly because I was a weird kid, liking these weird superheroes and sci-fi, and for where I'm from, it was at the time, and it wasn't that popular. It was seen as sort of, you're the weird kid, you're the outsider. So I got picked on and stuff like that. But it was always the X-Men that they were being hunted or persecuted on just because they were a bit different. So that's why I sort of related to them. And then the friends I hang out shared similar views because they were a bit more alternative, or they were gay, or whatever. Just something that they could sort of relate to. So, and I think it is also a bit of the escapism. I think it's the blend of the two. Yeah. Because I think for me, especially when I go into the cinema, and especially I'm going to see a comic book film, I want that big epic scale that you're seeing. But I also want to be taken away into this world, but also reminded about how I can live my life and what I can do to improve my life. Yeah, exactly. Make myself a better person. Yeah. I feel we get that mostly with Superman when done well. Yeah. But yeah, I just think, and like you said, collaboration as well. That's why we're doing this, which is why I've always loved comics as well, because you have a writer and you have an artist. Yeah. Sometimes more. But you've always got at least two people working on this thing, and it starts from there, and then it builds outwards. And then movies, you thousands of people all collaborating. So, did you read any comics growing up, bro?
Not so much growing up. That was more of the you watch all the series, you watch all the films, and you're just like, what is this based on, kind of thing. So, I'd say maybe through university, I was sort of like picked up some. I always was drawn to Spider-Man, and even though I loved the X-Men and everything, I kind of thought that looks too expansive for me because Uncanny X-Men, Amazing X-Men, like there's so many X-Men titles. So it was like at least Spider-Man, you kind of knew where to go. So I always remember like picking up. And something actually, one of my earliest memories is, I don't know if you had this, but they did a DVD trilogy once the X-Men The Last Stand came out, because I didn't have any of them on DVD. Yeah. I bought this trilogy, and there was a little comic book inside it, and it was like Stan Lee meets Xavier and Magneto was like an original story that they made.
Yeah, that's cool.
They made for that, and I think they also included the original X-Men issue number 1 or something in this little slip. It was like the size of a DVD case.
I was gonna say, ain't the original X-Men #1?
No, like they
you got that, yeah.
Yeah. So they
collecting dust somewhere.
Yeah, so they put those panels into that, and yeah, so it was stuff like that, and then it would be like. When they do like the Spider-Man volumes or like they do magazines, and they'd be like, oh, collect the Marvel collection and that kind of stuff.
All those,
So I was going through like the old Spider-Mans and checking out like the old fashioned, like the original Vulture issues and the original Mysterio issues and that kind of stuff. And then the only other, like I said, it would be things like video games and stuff. I'd also be exposed to different storylines, cartoons. And then the only other time I sort of really dipped into it was when I was finishing university, and that's when the Avengers, the film, had come out, and everyone was then like, "Oh my god!" So
it was a great time.
So that's when I wanted to sort of deep dive into it. Me and one of my friends were like, "Oh, we're going to start buying comic books and everything like that." So we would go into like a shop in Cardiff quite a lot, and then they were like, "Oh, we recommend this," and you're just coming out with all this content, etc.
They're good
eventually,
salespeople.
Eventually
Honestly.
overwhelmed me, and I was just like, I can't keep up buying Blu-rays, cinema
It's
tickets,
so
and
overwhelming,
comics.
yeah.
So I eventually knocked it on the head because it was just
And getting more
overwhelming.
expensive as well, comics.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to collect floppies. I used to, weekly.
Yeah,
But I've changed my format to just buying the trades now, the trade paperbacks, like like 6, 7, whatever issues, and I got volume 1.
yeah. I think that's the way I would have to do it if I went back.
Yeah, because it's so overwhelming, and I've been like, oh, I really want that. And the thing is, these damn comic book stores, like when you go in there, like God bless them, like they're like, oh, you should check out that and that, and I'm like, yeah.
Exactly.
Because like you say it's cool, so I'll check it out.
Yeah, and you get like the events. So I remember when I went tried to get into it, they did. I think they
crossovers.
they had just finished the. Was it actually called Infinite? They did the Infinity Saga, which was where they sort of where Proxima Midnight and all those characters sort of originated from. And they rebooted the Avengers, and I thought, oh great, like great chance to jump into an Avengers comic because they had a new team. I think I also checked out like Uncanny Avengers, and that's where they would like mix in the X-Men. I was like, cool, I like X-Men. I think they also did the Battle of the Atom series, and with that, then they're like, oh, so to keep up with this event, you get a little card, and it's like you then have to buy Fantastic Four, and you have to buy. So you're like, oh, not only do I need to buy all the issues to this series, I have to buy random issues to other series. So. But yeah, I did enjoy my time doing it. I loved it. Got me into, I think it was either Guardians had just come out, so they had the new Guardians of the Galaxy comics. But then I checked out Nova. I really liked the run on Nova they did. I really liked the Sinister Six, which was kind of like Marvel trying to do the Suicide Squad, and they had Shocker and was it like Beetle and.
Scorpion in there as well.
Yeah, I think what do they call the Marvel version? It's not. Is it just Boomerang? Is that his name? It's not Captain Boomerang. Is DC, but they have a Boomerang equivalent in Marvel, and those are really fun because that was the first time I was reading a comic and was like, wow, this is really funny, and these are really good gags and really good jokes. So yeah, like I said, even though I fell away from it because it was so hard to keep up with, that's where I sort of appreciated the source material, was when I was sort of checking that out in about 2013, 14, 15, that kind of time.
Yeah, I mean, me growing up, I didn't have any comic book stores at all. Nothing. We had a couple of news agencies, but the only news agency that sold comics, and it was old issues. But I remember, obviously, Batman was my number one.
Yeah,
Batman would always be my number one. So I bought loads of those. Justice League, Superman, X-Men, and because they didn't have much, strangely, they had Doctor Strange comics.
Oh,
yeah, really weird.
Can be down to, like I said, that Kevin Feige thing. Like the shop owner might be like, I like Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
so I
it was sort of that. And I was like, a young kid opening those books, all the artwork done by Steve Ditko.
Yeah.
With Stan Lee, and being like, whoa, this is fucking insane. Like, and I'm just the visuals. And so when they announced the Doctor Strange movie, I was pumped,
Yeah.
Probably more pumped than anyone else was. I was like, I don't know who Doctor Strange is. And I was like, you don't know? Like,
yeah, I do.
This is fucking great. Like, I can't wait. And I still regard it as, it's probably in my top 10. I really like that movie.
Yeah.
But then it was the comic that changed my life. Well, two comics, actually. It was 2005. I remember the year. Batman Begins came out. Batman Begins was a huge movie for me because it completely changed my perspective on comic book movies and comic book characters and what they could do.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh shit! And then I heard that Nolan, was really inspired by Year One. And then, so I picked up Year One and was like, wow, this is me. This is like the comics I really like. This was at the age of 12, going on 13. So right going through puberty, going on to be an angsty teenager, to then go from Year One and then discover The Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah.
Which to this day, call me, I'm a basic bitch. Most people will put this as their number one, or a lot of people. It's my number one. It's because for good reasons. It's flawless in every way. I think like the character development of Batman, what Frank Miller did with him, this grittier, darker, old take. This grizzled guy, and then coming out of retirement, he's beating people up he's like a brawler. Yeah, he has that final showdown with Joker, and then obviously him fighting Superman, which at this age, I like Superman, but my mistake thinking that he was a bit of a punk. You know what I mean? That I was like, he's stupid. He's all goody two shoes.
Yeah.
I was like edgier stuff. So to see Batman beat the shit out of Superman, I was like, yeah, fucking give it to the man.
Do it.
and it was very much, now that I'm older and you see more of the themes that Frank Miller was trying to do, it really was the blue collar people sticking it to the man. That's basically what he was sort of going for.
Yeah, exactly.
And it was from that moment where I was like, right, this is this type of stuff I like. I like the darker, edgier stuff, which then led on to the more indie stuff. But then, funnily enough, as I grew older, I started really respecting and admiring more Superman. And to this day, they're those two. For a lot of people, they are the two best, but they are my two favorites, Batman and Superman. For those reasons, how he can inspire so much hope. And especially now in such a dark time we are in, currently with all this uncertainty and so much weird shit going on in the world. We need Superman. We need somebody like Superman. Which is why it baffles me when Warner Bros. Are like, we don't know what to do with the character. I'm like, how could you not fucking know? It's crazy. How could you not know what to do with him? He's not relevant these days. I'm like, what? What? Okay. So it was that moment where everything changed for me. And then carried on reading, but and then obviously Dark Knight came out, and the rest is sort of history from there.
I think the Dark Knight had a big influence on people, and because again, that's where you start to see people turn up in Joker costumes, and people wouldn't judge them. They'd be like, "That's cool." It was
2008. It was Dark Knight and Iron Man. It was those two. They
sort of took comic book properties seriously, and then that's where people who weren't into those properties before could say that they liked them and not feel embarrassed and that kind of thing.
Almost, at that point as well, you almost felt like people are asking you questions. They're like, oh, but what about this? And you're like, now you want to know shit.
Well, I think what's interesting with say the Marvel side of it is, not many people grew up sort of going, I can't wait for the Captain America film, and that's the same thing, and probably Marvel was like, do we have to do that one? People aren't interested in
pretty much the only guy they had. And one X-Men.
But it wasn't like they were like, he's a goody two shoes sort of character. Like Superman, you could tell executives were a bit cautious of doing a film about him. But I thought it was really interesting how growing up watching the MCU must be quite interesting, because I watch Captain America and think, I'm Steve before he becomes the the muscly guy kind of thing. So even with that character, they have that inspiration of the character, because he always is still the little guy, the smaller guy, and he's defending those people and his morals, etc. And it speaks to a lot of people because he's a soldier. It's the realism of that side of things. So even though again Captain America can't be compared to say Superman, Batman, Spider-Man is the bigger character popularity wise, I think that's what's great again about those characters and why they're inspirational, because they tell the stories of true people, and they can be inspirational in that, like you said, in that way.
Well, that leads us perfectly to our last bit of the show, because we've been talking for quite a while now. So you know what we're all about, people. We're going to be giving you these shows every fortnightly. Next one, I'm so excited for DC Fandom, bro. See what DC sort of have a plan. We'll see.
I want to know if there is a dome involved. I kind of,
you're the dome in your house.
Let's get nuts.
So let's kick it off with our top 3 comic book movies. So I'm sure we've sort of hinted at what we sort of like.
Yeah, I tried to, as I go along, like, oh, don't spoil too
don't
much.
spoil that too much. I mean, my list, you're gonna see a theme in my list of the type of films I like.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we'll probably see one for you.
Yeah.
But let's start off for you. What we'll do is that we'll do one each at a time. So
Yeah.
start off with you. What's your number 3?
Number 3. So for me, this would be, I knew I had to put like an MCU one in there somewhere, just because, like I said, 20 odd films. I was like, they've had an impact on comic books for good reason, kind of thing. But to me, so much of it is sometimes when you think of certain films in the MCU, you're like, well, a lot of that works because of the previous films, or because it's a sequel to this, or it carries on that story. So can you say it's one of the best because could somebody watch it on its own? And I think what we were talking about, what they're doing so well, is this film, to me, really did change that and twisted it. And it's Guardians of the Galaxy. I think they so changed the MCU. You literally, if you get like a montage of all the posters, it's like dark, gritty, dark,
Bright purple.
Yeah. And then it just, from there, goes to, full, Ragnarok and all those kind of stuff. And they could, if you look at Endgame, you're like, could you have understood half of Endgame and Infinity War without that film? Because even if you didn't have the stones in Avengers Age of Ultron and the original Avengers, I don't call it Avengers Assemble. I think that's a stupid
It's the
UK.
Avengers.
Yeah. If they didn't have, those stones brought up in those movies, I think Guardians still does a fantastic job of laying the seeds and telling the story of how they exist. And you get to see Thanos. You then, when you go to space,
brings you into the whole cosmos side of the MCU.
Exactly, yeah. It's the cosmic MCU is brought in because of that film.
And they did it without it being so jarring from what you'd previously seen.
Yeah, exactly.
It was like they made it go, yeah, this fits in with the MCU.
Yeah.
Without it being like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
And they made a raccoon, talking raccoon and a walking tree believable and likable.
Yeah, and that's where the theme comes into it about what you said so earlier. I was like, I like it when it's different powers. Umbrella Academy, you got different types of powers, weird characters that shouldn't work. So when Guardians of the Galaxy was announced, I was like, I have a feeling this is going to be up my street because it is, a talking tree. What the hell, is it a talking raccoon? How is that ever going to work? And yeah, the fact that they do nail it, I think is fantastic. And I think actually, yeah, I think I read the Guardians comics before it came out, or I'd looked into them in preparation. And the one thing I was like, I thought they were all perfect. It was strange that Gamora was not quite like the armored warrior that she is in the comic books. But it's fine. You get film versions, comic versions. But it's also, like you said, we were talking earlier about like Joker and stuff, how that is a filmmaker taking his vision. So it is, a lot of people could say, I think like Ant-Man, maybe it falls into this a bit. Sometimes the older Thor films of being like just a generic MCU sort of film. Whereas this, it's got the James Gunn stamp on it. And,
full on flavor, yeah.
So the visuals, the gags, the storylines, the musics, especially. And I think that's what's good as well, is they changed the entire industry, because all of a sudden you then are getting trailers cut to Ballroom Blitz and all these 70s songs which have no reason to have them as a backdrop music before, but Guardians changed that.
Suicide Squad basically wanted to be Guardians.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was, as soon as they brought that film out, they were like, get Suicide Squad on the thing. So yeah, I just commend it for just how different it is. I love the characters. I think a lot of people, I was tempted to put in number 2 as one of my favorites, because in a way, I almost prefer number 2, but I just have to give number 1 the credit for starting it all. I think it just has a nicer story as a rounded story. Obviously, I don't think you could watch Volume 2 without having seen Volume 1. But I do think that, as an honorable mention, some people rank Volume 2 lower than I would like, because I think that it does loads of great stuff for the characters. And really steps up, and the soundtrack is possibly better in Volume 2. But
soundtrack is great. I'll give you that. And I think the reason why most people don't think that is because, like James Gunn said, it's a lot of B-sides.
Yeah.
It's a lot of unheard tracks.
Yeah,
You know
and that's again more my jam. Where I'm like, I haven't heard this song before. Whereas like when Spirit in the Sky comes up, I'm like, yeah, I've heard this.
Yeah,
Like
you
plenty
heard
of
this
times.
on 1,000 films.
Yeah. So,
but the great thing as well is that, but they're all still intentionally picked to fit to the story he's telling.
exactly, yeah. Like Brandy is the perfect example. Like the character says the lyrics at the end, and that's what I love about that. When I saw it, I was like, oh my god, that's brilliant. So, but why I went for the first one is the prison break scene. Brilliant, amazing sequence. The entire end scene. Somebody could say like, oh, that's just pretentious, that whole like, hold my hand, Peter. But he makes it work. He sets that up at the beginning of the film. His mum's dying. He doesn't hold his mum's hand. And then at the beginning, he has to hold somebody's hand to, save the galaxy. And, when you say it, it sounds kind of goofy, but they make it work in the context of the film. And just the idea that he is just, we're the Guardians of the Galaxy, bitch, and dance off, and the music is really good in that sequence. So yeah, I think they just do a fantastic job of bringing it to the screen and making it its own thing while also introducing the cosmic MCU, and yeah, just having a lot of fun.
They like did an ensemble cast, like a team up film, without having to do individual films first. They proved that you could do it in one film.
Yeah, and it's nice to see it as a family as well. With it, that was the first time where they're like,
I thought the second film more so was obviously because it's his dad, but it's very played on themes of family and found family and all sorts of other stuff with Yondu.
Yeah, well, it goes to show how strong those films are. When in Endgame, I was like tearing up just when Rocket, when Nebula comes back with Tony, and they sort of just sit next to each other,
pets him.
and like, or do they hold hands?
Do they hold hands?
Yeah,
they do something.
Just at the loss of the rest of them, I'm like, oh,
it's. I mean, I have my problems with Volume 2, but it's. I rewatched it recently. It's still got a lot of great things, but the first one is up there in some. It's in my top 5 MCU. Absolutely,
definitely.
It's one of my favorites, and just for all the reasons you said.
Yeah. So, which is your number 3?
My number 3 is a completely different type of film.
I was going to say it is going to be.
It is Marvel though.
Okay.
And it's by Fox.
Right. Okay.
Okay. This one means so much. It hit me in ways emotionally I didn't think a comic book movie could do. It brought a really satisfying but also very somber end to a very popular character who to this day no one has played this character longer, and that is Logan.
Right, yeah.
With Hugh Jackman's last film as the character, Wolverine / Logan. This film, what other actor, apart from RDJ, but even RDJ didn't go on as long in terms of years as this character.
Yeah, didn't literally go through different incarnations of the franchise.
Yeah, different, obviously different directors, but different, perspectives, and we're going to take this character this way now, and all sorts of different through great films, mediocre films, and some bad films as well. But there's a history there with this character, with this actor playing this character. From the very first X-Men to, this unknown, stage actor from Australia.
Yeah.
Everyone complaining that he's too tall and all this. To now, think that everyone's like, you can't replace Wolverine. You can't replace Hugh Jackman. Like, how can you recast? You can't. You can't. Hugh Jackman is Wolverine.
Yeah.
And he is. For a whole generation, he is Wolverine.
Yeah.
And this film, I thought, did an amazing job of capping that story off in a really interesting way, which I really have to commend Fox for doing it this way.
Yeah.
First of all, for really allowing James Mangold and Hugh Jackman to make what they wanted to make. Not just this action fuel blockbuster type of film, which we kind of got with the Wolverine. I could see where James Mangold, the first 2 acts I thought were really interesting, but then the third act just falls to the same trap of big bad at the end, and it just fell apart at the end for me. But this film, they were like, no, we want to do a character piece. We want to really focus on this character for all the hardship he's gone through in his life, because he's gone through a lot, and considering that he carries the weight of the world on his shoulders, this character, and the fact that he's seen all his friends, all his family die effectively, you know, because he lives longer than anyone else, even longer than Professor X.
Yeah.
He's definitely older than him. And to see this tortured soul have this send-off, you know, and to almost pass on to the mantle, which was an amazing performance by Daphne Keane as X-23 or Laura. And then to also add the swan song for Sir Patrick Stewart, who I thought gave his best performance as Professor X.
Yeah, exactly.
And Hugh Jackman, I thought that was the best performance of his entire career.
Yeah.
So it really made me think about things of like, you know, getting old and reflecting on your life and would you do things different and all these really deep, powerful things. And then on the more pleasing side of things, the rated R, the action, the blood, that they were like, go for it. You know what I mean? Just go for it. And like, don't need a big budget. And, you know, and they combine two of my favorite genres, which was sci-fi and Western. Because I look at that movie as a Western sci-fi sort of thing. It's just amazing what they did. And I thought, it just really showed me and to Hollywood as well that these movies can be serious. Yeah. These movies can have really deep, complex themes about them, and they can be nominated for Oscars. And it was nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. Yeah. Which for me, I was happy that it just got nominated. I was like, fucking great, man. Exactly, yeah. But yeah, Logan's my number 3.
Cool. Yeah. And
fantastic piece of cinema.
And it's great. What I find fascinating about the X-Men universe is that they're able to, they do it in Days of Future Past and they do it with Logan, is you can have two very different versions of, let's take the history of what we've done as a film franchise and apply that to the movies. So, you know, despite timelines and all that kind of stuff, let's just like acknowledge all of this. So let's have a film in which like the future versions are, you know, and the past versions were using the two different incarnations. I think it's brave, and it's the same with Logan. It's that, you know, they're brave to then take it, well, let's almost make it as if this character is tired from this franchise, but, you know, make it, you know, from his life. So yeah, you do have to just completely respect how that film goes. Personally, like, I find it's, for me, because you'll know from my top list, because it is so dark and gritty, and to me, especially Professor X, it gives me quite like reflections of like relatives and stuff, and I'm like, oh, you know, so it it doesn't give me,
it's intentional.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like,
so but because I don't get that sort of like, because, you know, like you get that darker feeling from it, it's hard for me then to be like, oh, I love that film kind of thing. And I think it's weird, you know, it is weird that it just goes to like rated R. I think it's good for it, but it is weird to see all the X-Men films and then watch that and be like, whoa. What's this going on? My number 2 is kind of on the same vein of like legacy and, you know, nostalgia and that kind of thing. And it's Marvel again, but this time not MCU. And it is Spider-Man 2.
Great fucking film, man.
So Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2.
That film slaps hard. Yeah. Like,
and again, I was, you know, I was deliberating with, you know, Guardians 2, and I was like, oh, I've already got the sequel with Spider-Man, but even there, I was like, should I go for the original though? And I love the original, and I think it's fantastic, and there's so many elements of it which are probably more nostalgic than number 2, but you just can't deny what a masterpiece of filmmaking in general it is, because it crafts his story so well. And it's a perfect sequel because it just takes all the drama and themes that they build up in the first film and then just continue them like perfectly. It just picks up straight away. So I just love, and it's that time in which there was before, and Logan kind of goes back to that as well, of, you know, we don't need to have like 100 different characters like popping up. We don't need to have 3 villains. We don't need to have Spider-Man, you know, is with Iron Man and, you know, that kind of stuff. So it is nice to just have it be about that lone superhero. So yeah, I just love
with a
so many elements
villain as well.
Yeah, like, you know, Alfred Molina is a great actor anyway. I love him in general. But in that role, he's fantastic. And yeah, there's so many moments in that film, like so many sequences. The train scene
like, is one of the
just so memorable. And you also have when he decides to, you know, Spider-Man no more, and then he flashes back to that Uncle Ben scene. Or, well, they sort of recreate it perfectly. And what I think is fantastic about that is when you can sort of look back at that, with great power comes great responsibility, with rose-tinted glasses, it's a bit cheesy. But in the original film, it's not actually played as that cheesier scene.
No, it's
He just says it. And
believe it. Right?
Yeah. So, and he just goes, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. He leaves. So then it's great. Then the second one then does put it in this dream-like, scenario. And then, he's finally sort of like confronting his guilt about, Ben. And yeah, I think that's just what is so good about that film, is that it's a great drama on its own with just some superhero stuff
basically
added onto it. So, and I love that as well. It's a mix of genres. Sam Raimi gets the horror stuff in there with the Doc Ock birth. That's amazing. But there's humor in there as well. There's, you get the nice nods of, the woman playing the Spider-Man tune, like Spider-Man, Spider-Man. And it has a great ending, which didn't come out so well in the third film. But I remember that was one of the first times I went to the cinema and was leaving, and people were going, oh, like, what's the next one going to be? It was the first time I'd ever been to the cinema and heard people talking in excitement about what's the next one going to be, because that end scene.
Little did we know.
Yeah. But I remember my dad specifically to go, well, the Green Goblin's going to be the villain in the next one and that kind of stuff. But I can't really remember like cliffhanger endings.
That was almost like post-credit scenes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's weird how... Yeah, it was the first time that you sort of seen, like you said, a post-credit scene almost, and there was like teasing what was gonna come.
Still better than a lot of post-credit scenes that Marvel's done
exactly,
now. Like,
It's like, oh, who is this guy? And you also have, of course, which works in the first film as well, but J. Jonah Jameson is just... You need him in Spider-Man, and that's why I was so glad to see him in Far From Home. Yeah. So, and he has a great Doctor Strange, that's where that reference come from. Yeah, it's just
pretty good. Take it.
So, yeah, there's loads of lines I love in that film. It's just a great sequel in general.
It's good.
And yeah, just loads of nostalgia.
It's one of those. It's definitely one of those when people talk about the great sequels. Like the second one's better than the first. That one's always up there.
Yeah,
that one always comes up. Right. Yeah, great film. Guess going to my number 2. This film is from the very beginning when they announced it. I was like, I don't want this film. Don't want this film at all. No interest in this film. There's no need to make this film. Why is... Wait, hang on. It's not connected to the bigger universe. Wait, hang on. You're getting a different actor to play the role. Wait, what is going on here?
Yeah.
What are you trying to do with this film? Wait, hang on. You're trying to make it like a gangster film? Wait, the director of Hangover is doing this?
Yeah.
And I'm just a bit like, okay. And the movie I'm talking about is Joker.
Yeah.
Right. So this is a movie that I did not want to see, right? For so many reasons. Main reason, and for a lot of people, is that, the whole kind of big part of why we love the character of the Joker is the whole ambiguity of his origin. He's got multiple origins, or all these. That's what makes him almost terrifying. That you don't know where he comes from, what his background is, the unpredictability of him.
Yeah.
So when they said that they're going to do a sort of origin story, I was a bit like, oh, I don't know if I really want to see that. And then and then also the fact that it's no Batman sort of thing, no ties to Batman, and I thought. Being the huge Batman fan I am, and Joker being my favorite villain, it's yin and yang. I almost feel as if you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
You could do Batman without Joker because he's got so many other villains, but if Joker's there, I'm like, Batman shouldn't be far behind, sort of thing. But I thought, all right, I'll give it the benefit of the doubt. And then my tune changed when I saw that trailer, that first trailer. And I thought, okay, well, this is interesting. They're going for like this art housey approach.
Yeah.
Joaquin Phoenix was announced, and I thought, okay. I mean, he's a phenomenal actor. He's one of the best currently, I think. So I thought, okay, let's see what you got.
And how time could have changed if he did play Doctor Strange.
I know, right? Yeah. So I was thought, okay, let's see what you got. And obviously it's a very disturbing film. I found it incredibly disturbing, incredibly provocative, but for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
I absolutely loved what Todd Phillips did with this character. This completely original approach. Still, at some point, staying true to the ambiguity, because I still think by the end of the movie, it is left to the viewer about what actually happened, Who was actually his parents? Was that his mum? Was Thomas Wayne his father? All these questions I still think you're left with.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's good. You've left it on a bunch of questions, which I think is how a Joker film should end.
Yeah.
On a bunch of questions. And, you know, obviously, what can you say about Joaquin Phoenix's performance? Guy got an Oscar for it.
Yeah.
Fully deserved. Committed so much to that role, physically, mentally, you know, to give us this very similar to Logan, this character piece, incredibly somber, dark tale of this guy who is being abused by society, you know. It takes a really deep look into mental health and how society treats mental health, and you know what we and a lot of themes about capitalism and, you know, politicians and even online social media and how people talk to each other these days. You know, the fact that everyone's behind a screen in a way. And it's funny because this film sort of takes place in, it's not specified what year it takes place, but it's got this 80s feel about it, early 80s, 70s, like Martin Scorsese, King of Comedy, Taxi Driver, which is heavily inspired by that sort of vibe. But they're still talking about themes about social media and mental health, which at that time, you know, it's not the thing, really.
No, yeah.
And, you know, I will admit this on the show, you know, I've gone through all sorts of, you know, I've had some problems with mental health and stuff like that. Still going from there. I mean, who doesn't these days? We've all got demons. And this film spoke to me in a way that I didn't think, you know, not in a way like, oh, he's an incel, he's going to start killing people. In a way that I thought, wow, this is really powerful that you've put this onto screen. And, you know, I'm a big believer, and I think that cinema should shock you. Yeah. I think cinema is an experience that you should walk out of the theater questioning what you've seen and questioning some of the questions it's asked you. Yeah. Sort of thing. I think cinema should be reflective like that on how we treat other people and the world we live in and all this stuff. And I think that film did that in a very deep way, in a very interesting way, and in a way I don't think anyone else would have had the balls to do. Yeah. Marvel would definitely not have the balls to do it. No. I thought, you know, Fox, they got kind of close with Logan, but I don't think they'd go that deep. Sony ain't doing that with any of the Spider-Man characters. So it would have to be DC to do it. And when I look at the pantheon of DC villains, I go, yeah, it's kind of perfect to do that sort of thing with now. So yeah, it's just magical in every way. The score is bone chilling. You know, it's
what by who?
Man, I don't want to butcher her name. First name Hilda.
Yes,
from Iceland.
Yeah, amazing score.
Congratulations to winning the Oscar, fully deserved. First Icelandic person ever to win an Oscar. Yeah, which is brilliant. But yeah, it's one of my favorite scores because, like, from the moment I heard it, watching this film, I was like, that's going to win the best score. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm a score guy. I love my scores. Yeah. There's times where I'm listening to it as well, like just, you know, whatever. And at times I need to turn it off because it's making me angry.
Yeah, exactly. You're like, ooh.
So, but yeah, Joker, man, it just floored me in ways I didn't expect. And I think that's a sign of a good film, that it challenged me.
And also makes you, to me, even when I look back on it, I wouldn't say, like somebody says comic book film, I wouldn't think of it because it just becomes its own entity, becomes its own film.
Exactly. I think the only thing comic book about it is that you're using Joker and the name Gotham and Wayne are there. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. And also when you say about like its influences, obviously you've got like the staircase sort of dance, you know, people go into that location to take pictures. But you've also got like, you get what you deserve, so like, you know, that entire end monologue interview scene is just amazing, you know, and
when tension in that scene, and like how the music stops, and then Joaquin Phoenix's performance, like when he's saying, and you could see the tear coming in his eye, and you're like, wow, this is something else. And you know, the fact that they went on full art with it as well, like full on art, and it made $1 billion over.
That's the biggest.
That's the biggest thing here. That who would have thought an origin rated R Joker film would have made this much money?
Yeah, it
doesn't happen.
It's commendable. And like you said, it's disturbing, it's chilling, and rightfully so, because, you know, like I said, you get elements of that with, you know, Joker in lots of stories. You know, the fact that he does, like, you know, kill, you know, Robin, and, you know, but you're always like, would we ever see that in a film? You know, and that version would be the closest in which we've seen that truly psycho version.
Okay, man, so we're up to your number one. Numero uno.
Yes, yeah. So in terms of like Marvel versus DC, unfortunately DC hasn't made it into my top 3. And then Marvel sort of hasn't, but I will acknowledge that I think they have some publication history with this title, but I think it's mainly Image. I'm right in thinking.
Okay.
But I think Marvel like published them at some point. So my favorite comic book movie and one of my favorite films of all time is Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass.
Yes.
Damn, that's a fucking great movie.
So Matthew Vaughn is one of my favorite directors. I love Kingsman. I love First Class. I think that's a great, X-Men film. He has such a great style to him, and Kick-Ass came out at just the right time for me. I was just like coming out of teenage days before going to university, etc. And yeah, it just felt so different. I think I saw somebody not long ago say if this film come out now, it would do a lot better because it has got the Deadpool-esque of like, oh my god, superheroes are so popular now, and this is mocking superheroes. Whereas this came out,
violence and
whereas this came out before all of that. The opening scene is literally a guy jumps from a building and just dies because he thinks he can fly from the building. But it's just got so many elements to it that I love, and I think, again, talking about the stuff that was in Guardians, and again, you see the sort of like theme here is like oddballs, different kind of characters, more edgy, sort of like weird characters, and that's definitely the case with all the characters in this film. Before Guardians, it was kind of having like a kooky, strange soundtrack. It didn't go so like, oh, we can do all 70s, but it has the banana splits when Hit Girl is killing like a bunch of people, so you already know it's got a very like out there soundtrack. And yeah, I just loved, again, like you said with Logan and stuff, that the studio was just willing to go, yeah, do it, do what you want. And Matthew Vaughn is really good, and you see this especially in the Kingsman films of like action sequences and great sort of fight scenes. And I think that Hit Girl scene where she comes in with the night vision goggles, I think is still one of the most amazing scenes.
I still think it's one of her best performances.
Yeah, like that scene where it's like a video game. She's going around killing people and she's sort of like seeing them. Like, that's amazing. The sort of first, banana splits when she's like stabbing all those guys, that's great. And it's just, when I watch it, but now you're like, okay, this is a kind of like, a bit immature parts. Like, it's kind of like appealing to sort of like more teenage humor and some thing, yeah. And when he's getting with that girl, he's like, oh, she thinks I'm gay, and like, oh no, and like, oh no, we're having sex outside and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, I do love its realism. So it starts off and Aaron Taylor Johnson's playing this character, and it carries on kind of when Taron Egerton's playing like Eggsy and Kingsman. They always do it as like, I'm not playing this conventional white boy, like, oh, I've always wanted to do this or whatever. He says, my mum died of an aneurysm. There's no element of me wanting to be like revenge,
It's just happened.
So, I love how realistic the characters are. You also have Evan Peters before he was picked up and went on to Quicksilver in X-Men. Yeah, Chloe Moretz is obviously a great find.
Nick Cage.
Yeah,
let's not forget about
exactly.
Nick Cage.
One of my favorite aspects of this is Nick Cage, and I love Kick-Ass and Hit Girl, but what makes me love Big Daddy so much is the decision to do the Adam West stuff. I know some people might be like, that's stupid, and I'm like, no, that's perfect. Why it's so good, because he's playing a Batman-esque character, and Nick Cage, kind of like you see it, I think, when you look at the behind the scenes of Spider-Verse, when he's saying like, oh, I'm this noir character, so I wanted to play it in this kind of way. So the fact that he then sort of goes, well, I'm playing this Batman character, so I thought let's do like an Adam West type thing. And it just is so entertaining because, he's like, kick ass. Well, and he has a great scene as well when he blows up that warehouse
thing. Yeah, when he goes in and just slaughters everyone.
Yeah, and he has that like that music. So I think Henry Jackman does the score to this, which is really great because it's like when he's doing all of that stuff. It's really like colorful film as well. It brings out like the good colors of comic books. So you have like, you just have like the gangster elements. Mark Strong is a fantastic villain as well. He's so good. And one of my favorite elements is just the end sequence. It's just as soon as Hit Girl arrives there in a like schoolgirl uniform, you're just like, shit's about to go down right now. But yeah, it's just I love all of that. I like you said, they bring in, that was when Facebook and everything first started, Twitter, and they're like, oh, like Red Mist is like popular on Twitter and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. And
it was because it was super meta as well about itself. Like,
and there's so many great memorable lines and dialogue in that. Like one of my favorites, I still love, like, "Fuck you, Mr. Bidey," when he falls down, and then you have like that great sequence, and that's a great line as well. He's just like, you're gonna like sacrifice your life for some piece of shit you don't even know, and he's like, 3 assholes turn into one guy, and he's like, yeah, I'd rather die, and you're like, yeah, it's a great moment, and that's why Aaron Taylor Johnson plays him so well. I think he's right at the very end fight, he's like battered, and he is like looking at himself in the mirror like, wow, I look like shit. So but then you also get like, like these nice moments. So, you get like the sort of heroic music when he's flying away with Hit Girl. And yeah, like Hit Girl does steal a lot of the film. She is a great character.
She definitely stole the film, yeah.
So, it's, and again, costumes, all of it. I just love every
element
of it.
They went out full out. They were like, yeah, it was pretty much have fun.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And if it wasn't for this, you wouldn't get The Boys or Deadpool.
No.
I don't think if you don't get this one. Because again, they stuck to the R rating. They were like, let's do it. You know,
I was thinking that it's like it was like an early Deadpool almost. Yeah.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that as your number one. That is a wild card there.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be really, again, like I said, I'm a basic bitch at times. So my number one is for a lot of people's number ones, but for good fucking reason, man. This film slaps on so many levels. It's just my favorite film, like comic book film. Nothing compares to it. Like, there's a lot of great comic book films, but I just feel as if the margin, like, this film is here, and then this is a podcast, and I'm trying to show something visually. This film is at like God level tier, and then nothing else just comes close to it yet for me, and that is The Dark Knight.
Fair.
Like, it's, I mean, I don't know what else I can say that already hasn't been said about The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
Do you know
I thought you were going to go, because originally you had like animated was like thrown in, wasn't there? So I thought you might have had Batman
Mask of the Phantasm. It's
Phantom.
a great film. It's honestly a fantastic, but it's not there. For me, it's The Dark Knight. I mean, for reasons. Do you know what I mean? Obviously, top of everyone's list, it's Heath Ledger as the Joker is one of those performances where it's, once every 50 years or something like that. It's the performance that will just kept on being talked about, and it doesn't like the conversation about his performance is not even dying down. It's like whenever it's brought up, it's like everyone's like, "Oh fuck yeah!" Like,
and even socially, the themes get brought up again when he has the whole like everyone loses their minds,
memes, all these things that are now being brought into our social culture, our pop culture, with social media and everything. And why so serious? It's become such a staple line. And let's you want to know how I got these scars? All these amazing lines that have become embedded in our culture, more so than I would say the Jack Nicholson Joker, and he was also fucking huge.
Yeah.
So it's just insane what Christopher Nolan did, and the thing is, he's the man I have to commend for all of this, because he did an amazing job with Batman Begins, and he, like I said, at that moment, he did something I didn't think was possible, took it really seriously, down to earth, gritty, unlike any superhero film we've seen. And he basically was like, how do I top that?
Yeah.
And here's that. And it goes to show, they spent a lot of time on this film, a lot of thoughts and passion, I think, went into this film to thinking, how can we possibly make this the best thing ever?
Yeah.
From everything, from the practicality of it. Christopher Nolan is notorious for not wanting to do as little visual effects as possible.
Yeah.
Keeping it all practical down to, it's just a feat of filmmaking in any other sense. With the lorry being flipped, they actually did that. They actually blew up a hospital.
Yeah.
This is a different film, but in Dark Knight Rises, they actually blew up a football stadium, or at least part of it. And I'm just like, that's commitment to a level that you don't see in film, and let alone this is a comic book film about a guy who does like a bat.
The Bane, like they did, like that they actually filmed that in a plane
The plane
and stuff.
thing,
Like,
it's absolutely crazy. So on that level, this film is a marvel. Like, it just does the cinematography, the set design, everything is just precisely, exactly engineered as Christopher Nolan wants it.
And he makes a very realistic Gotham. You believe that city exists.
Like, when I look at those movies, there's times where I do feel it could feel more like Gotham, but
a bit more gothic,
I feel more like a Chicago, or like a big metropolitan New York sort of thing. Batman Begins, I felt was a lot more like a Gotham.
Yeah.
But that's very much, that's like whatever. Like, who cares?
This is the approach he's gone
everything
with.
else in this film fucking slaps. Like the direction that Nolan took with the story as well. To obviously introduce the Joker and then have this, because what I think this film is essentially a crime thriller with Batman and the Joker in it.
Yeah.
Because that's all it, because it deals with corruption, deals with, of cleaning up your city. It deals with politics and how one man can actually make a difference. And deeper into the corruption and how if someone so good could be seen doing something so bad, it ruins everything.
And it takes seriously the ramifications of his previous film. The fact that, there's no Wayne Manor.
Exactly.
It's not like, they've rebuilt it in 3 years.
Everything's been affected by what's already happened.
Yeah.
The whole point of the Joker is that he is that yin to Batman. The way that they got that relationship between Batman and Joker, my favorite scene of the film, I think, is the interrogation scene.
Yeah.
Where, when Joker's been caught. Well, I say caught, he wanted to be caught. And that conversation where Joker's just spewing out to him. And I just love when he says, "Why do you want to kill me?" He's like, "I don't want to kill you." He's like, "What would I do without you?"
Yeah.
And they nail that love in a way. Sick love that these two have for each other.
Yeah.
That they can't be one without the other. The main sort of theme of this film is chaos as well. And Joker being an agent of chaos, and how basically he says you can destroy anything with an idea.
Yeah.
Basically, and just with time and patience, you could crumble an entire system.
Yeah.
And I just think it's got really, really powerful film in that sense. The cast performances from obviously Heath Ledger, we know that, but everyone kills it. Michael Caine, Christian Bale, obviously. I fucking love Gary Oldman as Commissioner Gordon. He's my favorite Gordon. I think he's so good. Morgan Freeman is Lucius. It's just everyone kills it.
The fact that I said earlier, I appreciate in Spider-Man 2 that it's nice to have just that one central villain. But this is a film that manages to pull off two villains. And a big villain with Two-Face is quite a big part, of Batman.
Yeah. And he only comes in towards, I'd say, maybe the last third of the film.
Yeah,
but it's the third act.
Still does it really well.
Does it well. You care because you've had those first 2 acts caring about this guy.
Yeah.
Seeing that this guy genuinely wants to save his city. And then for the Joker, which I believe by the end of the film, the Joker has won.
Yeah.
He got what he sort of wanted.
Yeah, the boat sequence is just amazing, because that was the moment when I was watching the cinema, being like, I'm not sure what to make of this. This is so different. And then when the boat sequence came, I was like, I get it now. This is
you
just
get
amazing.
What Joker's trying to do.
Yeah,
and so and Hans Zimmer's score. His score for all 3, the whole trilogy.
Yeah.
But it's flawless. What he did with the Joker and the razor blades on the cello to create that earring sound. That every time you hear that, he's around the corner, or it's just this sense of dread and terror and unpredictability. What else can I say about this film, bro? This film is fucking god level. It fucking slaps, this film.
Yeah.
I never get bored of watching this film. How could you? It's just incredible in every way.
It's like said as well, and same with Joker. It's, it transcends comic book films in that it feels like a big film on its own, because Nolan brings such a cinematic nature to all of his movies. And it's great that in that trilogy, obviously we won't be able to see Heath Ledger ever again, but it doesn't do the whole Tim Burton, sort of side of kills off the character kind of thing. It's left because he is an enigma and, an infamous character that, he doesn't seem like he would ever die kind of thing.
No,
even.
He can't.
So it ends perfectly in that sense as well. But yeah. It's a good choice. And very different choices in this 3 dark, gritty, films.
Very,
and then
very
3
my type of
crazy.
film.
Yeah.
And then you got a bit more colourful films going
crazy,
on there.
alternative. Apart from Spider-Man 2 maybe, but yeah.
Yeah, all of mine just got dark cinematography.
Yeah. Psychotic characters.
But, and that's it, bro.
This
is our first episode. I've really had a really good time doing this with you.
We have the piano bit
coming out there.
Yeah.
So as we end the show, been lovely talking to you, David, and talking to all the people who hopefully listen to this episode. where can the people find you? So if they want to carry on talking nerd stuff with you.
Yeah. You can catch me, David Oscar, on Twitter and Instagram, I believe. And then you can also catch my other podcast, which is Well Good Movies, and my website, which is Fresh Take Hub. So any of those, all the socials, which you can catch them at.
Love that shit.
Yeah, doing a lot of... So you'll see a lot of like writing, podcast stuff. And I mentioned about Spider-Man 2. I've got, hopefully, a very exciting Spider-Man project coming up for the internet soon.
Oh, shit. I don't even know about this.
No.
So, keep an eye out.
That's why
for
I was
that,
mentioning stuff about the franchise. I was like, oh, don't give too much away.
Don't give away too much, yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Sweaty Jake. You can find me on Instagram at Jake's Funko Pops. Jake's Funko Collection. I need to sort that.
It's a large collection.
It's a large collection. Getting out of hand. But yes, and remember, before we sign off, guys, everything we've said here is just our opinions, and none of this shit matters. So, see you next time.
Yeah. Keep it cool, guys. See you.